and thanks for joining me for part 2 of the Dark Knight build. I'll be using this Vallejo paint, and it's the blue grey. Now just using the airbrush, I'll just give him a nice even coat. And to speed up the process, a good old hairdryer. What I want to do now is mix two different types of greys together, the blue grey and the black. And this way I can create some shadows. Once I've mixed all those two paints together into the airbrush, and in the crevices or the recessed areas, I'm going to add the shadowing. Just to add so it creates a lot more contour to his body, really emphasize his muscles. Once that's done, onto painting his utility belt with the flat yellow. Now, because I'm painting on a dark surface, unfortunately the yellow doesn't quite cover it evenly, so I will need to do 2 coats of it. So the hairdryer has to come out once again, and the second coat is applied. Still don't understand why, he's the Dark Knight, but it has a very bright yellow belt. Not exactly a thing you would wear if you want to hide in the shadows, but he's Batman. Now I'm using the Tamiya flat black here for the gloves, and I'll be using that on his boots as well. And just brushing that on and trying to get it as even as possible. But because it is a glossy finish to it at the moment, because it's wet, it's really hard to see some of the areas if you miss it. So once I've gone through it all and checked it, one of the things I'll have to do is actually dry it off again, so it becomes a flat finish to it, and then go through and do some more touch-ups, make sure I haven't missed any bits and pieces. And I'm forever touching up. So here he is, all the greys and the blacks blocked in. So it's time to add a bit of highlight to his body. So I'm using this light grey from Model Masters and using a dry brushing technique, which is just getting the gunk from the bottom of the jar and lightly brushing it on. The raised areas will pick up the paint, and the recessed areas will remain the darker grey. That way it gives me a nice highlight. You can see his his uniform starting to come alive now. And some depth. Now I'm using this flat blue as a highlight for the black. And once again, so we can just add a bit of contour and shadowing with the highlights. Quick test fit of the cape. You can see he's looking pretty good. I'm using here the Tamiya, the panel line accent colour, and it's the dark grey, just to give it once again a bit more shadows and contour to the yellow. Now, unfortunately the first coat's a bit light, so I had to go in with 2 coats. Now it's time to paint his head. Now for the base coat for his face, I'm using the skin tone, nice even coat. Then I'm using the watered down transparent yellow across his face as a wash. Also the transparent red, and that just gives his face a bit more warmth. And then I'll wipe some of that off. And for the shadow areas, I'm using this Beastie Brown. And through the cheeks, underneath his chin, also underneath the nose. I'm just adding a whole bunch of shadows there. You can see he's starting to take shape now. Now I wanted to try something different. I'm using this Uni Posco pen, this white marker. I'm painting his teeth with it. Now it works really, really well, but unfortunately, because of the tip, I can't actually get underneath his lip. So I've kind of had to resort back to painting it in. So I've gone back to the Vallejo, the off-white, and I've just brushed over it with the paintbrush, and the brush is able to get underneath his lip. So much better coverage. And also his eyes. And now for his lips, I'm using the Barbarian Flesh. Now I really like this colour because it's got a bit of a slight red tone through it, and it's just perfect for lips. If it becomes too red, the lips end up looking like lipstick. So back to the Beastie colour, just touching up some of those shadows. Now I've gone to the skin tone once again, and now I'm adding all the exposed flesh. The areas where his uniform or costume, where the areas have been torn away from his flesh, I'm just adding the flesh tones into that now. Tell you, this dude's been in a hell of a fight because he has a lot of tears in his uniform. And now with the Tamiya flat black, I'm just painting his cowl. I'm starting off with a really fine brush, going around the edges first. Really happy with the way this came out. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button to follow me. Greatly appreciated. I've gone to a slightly bigger brush and just basically painting in between the lines now. Same thing. Quick dry and make sure I haven't missed any areas. Now, talking about missed areas, I did forget to paint his uniform emblem, his costume emblem. So I'm going in right now with the flat black once again. Don't know how I missed it, but I did. And back to the dark blue for the highlights, the flat blue, and also on the cowl. You can see he's really coming alive now, looking great. Now I'm trying to decide which red I'm going to use for his actual blood. And I decided to go with the clear red. And I'll probably use a bit of the Vallejo red as well. But I kind of mostly stick to the clear red from Tamiya. And just haphazardly just brushing around the tears there, where he's had a bit of a blood leak. Poor fella. He obviously won that fight. Again, really happy with the way they turned out. I thought I had a bit of blood around his lip as well as on his chin there. So now I'm going to actually stick his cape on. I'm using the 92nd Araldite. Solid as a rock. And back to some super glue, or CA glue, stick his head on. And he's almost done. Now onto the actual bat signal. Now I decided to use the Vallejo steel as the base coat. And the great stuff about this airbrush paint, it goes straight into the airbrush. No mixing, no diluting. And this is the Searchlight turntable. Back of the Searchlight. Bat signal. Same thing, I guess. And also the bat emblem, nice coat of the steel. You can see such a great even coat there. It's coming up really well. Now I'm just actually painting the plate here. The concrete section I'll just paint with the grey. And I'll probably do that just off camera. And it's done. All the base colours have been sprayed in, all blocked in. Now it's time to weather it up. Now I'm using these Vallejo environmental or environment paints or washes. Now the first coat I'm doing is with the streaking grime. And wiping it off with a damp cloth. Just so it basically stays in the recessed areas. And it is watered down a lot further than just out of the tin, or rather the jar. And I'm doing sections at a time. Once I've done a section, I'll wipe it off. And of course the concrete sections as well I need to weather up. Looking good. Now I started putting on this rust. Came out straight out of the jar really thick, and I just wasn't happy with it. Just didn't feel right. I'm trying to spread it out and push it around with a damp cloth and just wasn't performing well. Just wasn't happy with it. It's the first time I'd used this stuff. So I figured I'd use some airbrush thinner and really thin out the paint. And this really worked well. This really helped it. Made it flow and kind of just spread it out nicely. And I'm kind of winging it as I go. No idea what I'm doing. But kind of getting there. Nice dollop of rust over the nuts and bolts as well. A bit of a cleanup. And just adding some streaks, some random streaks around the actual light. Cleaning it up. And then hitting it with a fairly heavy wash. So now I'm going to dry brush the actual concrete areas, and I'm using the white grey for this. Again, just to bring out all the detail. Now I've got this light, I'm going to actually add a globe inside the middle of it. Now that's the hole for the wiring to actually come out. And this is the light I'm going to use. Now I actually bought this from Super Cheap Auto years ago. I had a bit of a problem with it. The batteries are leaking in the back of it, and I want to rip the light out of it and then use this socket to plug this power supply in, and that's I think like 5 volts. And then I'm going to try and wire the whole thing in. Now wiring isn't my expertise, so I'm just kind of winging it. And you'll see as I pull out the battery leak I had in there. So even though the light still works, it's become a bit of a mess. So it's a matter of stripping down the light now. I'm being fairly cautious, as you can see there. Just to make sure I don't break any wires off. Just snap off some areas just to get it out of the way so I know what's going on there. And that little reflector dish turns out to be quite a perfect size. And I just desolder some of the joints there, and I'll eventually glue that into place like that. Now this is the actual base plate I'm using that's going to mount the light on there and slide inside that globe. So it's constant trimming, filing, just to get it to the right size. Now I'm just marking where I want the plate to be. And I'm just making up these little lugs, or little supports. And then glue them into place just so I can have that light plate. I have something for it to actually fit onto, so it doesn't slide straight through. Now I need to drill a hole there. Yeah, I just used a 28mm drill bit there. Super gluing it into place. And then a bit of 5-minute arrow diet, just for that extra support there, extra strength. And using the hobby knife to create some pilot holes and screw it into place. Quick test, make sure it's all working, and it is. And a bit of soldering. Some of you Americans, you actually call this soldering. There's actually an L in the word solder. And again, a quick test, make sure it's all working. It is. Push it into place, then a bit of a glue, and look at that, works a treat. Now feed the wires through, and slide the globe in. Now the back half of the light, where it's not lighting up, I end up actually painting that in. Now I'm using this conduit that I had left over from when I did my 300ZX rebuild, because I wanted to clean up. I obviously didn't want those bare wires because they look a bit wire-ish. So I created this conduit, cut it to the right size as you saw, and quick test, and it looks fantastic. And of course that needs to be weathered up as well, so it suits. Easiest way to put this on is actually you twist the conduit as you push it up, and it kind of just slides on really easily. Now to put on that front facade, for lack of a better word, I decided to use this craft glue, this wood glue, just so it gives me the option if I ever need to get into the light again, I can just break it off quite easily, because it is water-based. Just a cautionary thing I thought I'll try and do. And just let it there dry. And off camera, I got a bit excited and I forgot to actually record this next section, but I ended up making these little greebly sections there just for the conduit to run into, and it's come up really well. And I also did another coat of weathering across the whole model, the whole searchlight, and this is the wiring underneath, and it just plugs straight in. All I did was hot stick it to the base. And you can see the extra weathering I did. I just made it a lot heavier. I also added a lot more weathering to the bat signal, or the bat symbol. And using pastel chalk, I weathered up his boots just to make sure he kind of looks unified with his surroundings. You can see he's looking fantastic. It's come up really well. I think it's time for some of the hero shots.